Great morning to each and every one of you, my beautiful and wonderful people. I just wanted to come on and encourage many of you that just because the music stopped doesn't mean that God has. So I was sitting in the presence of God the other day, and he showed me musical chairs. And I'm thinking, what does musical chairs have to do with it? And so the object of the game is to have the same amount of chairs as there is people, less one chair, right? And so when the music starts, you begin to walk around the chairs. Some people start dancing, everyone's happy, they're laughing, they're even talking to one another, right? Now, the person that's controlling the music, they have the authority. I need you guys to really tune in to what I'm saying to you. They have the authority to actually start and stop the music when they see fit, right? So you look up, everyone's laughing and they're having fun dancing to the music, but then out of nowhere, suddenly, the music stops. When the music stopped, everybody began to scramble for a chair. Everyone's nervous. They're looking around and trying to figure out, I want to make sure that I get a chair, right? Until there's only one person that's standing. And of course, you keep taking a chair away every time someone else gets out. Now, let me share this. When I was in elementary school, I was so good at musical chairs, y'all. I used to love playing that game. But a lot of people in my class did not want me to always play because I always won, okay? What I noticed was a lot of the children used to try to, sit halfway in the chair when they think the music is gonna cut off, or, they'll try to like put their hand on the chair when they walking around because they did not want to be the last man standing. And so my whole thought was, I'm gonna keep walking. I was confident. Why? Because my focus was not on the chair. My focus was listening to the music. I need you guys to really catch what I'm saying here. My focus was on the sound of the music. And every time I kept my focus on the sound of the music, I was always able to get a chair. And because I was so confident, I never lost. But here's the thing. When it got down to two people, me and my opponent, in that one chair, that's when I began to get nervous, y'all. What we got to understand is scripture tells us to let us not grow weary in well doing, for in due season we shall reap if we faint not. So now my thoughts are not focused on the music as it were before when I was confidently walking around the chairs. But then you have my opponent, and y'all know it's always that one little boy or that person in class that's the bully, so they're trying to intimidate you. But I kept my focus on listening to the music. And so, it was once we got side by side, the other person was on one side and I was on the other side. When that music stopped, I just was able to always just kind of either back up or walk forward and sit in the chair. I didn't have to rush. I didn't have to do anything specific. The chair was always meant for me because I stayed connected to listening to the music. Here's what I found out. In our spiritual walk with Christ, many of us are actually scrambling around because the music stopped. Just because the music stopped doesn't mean that God has stopped working on your behalf. As a matter of fact, this is the time now that he can do his best work to show you that I am who I say that I am in your life. This is the time where Romans 8:28 is going to stand true in your life. And we know that all things work together for the good of those that love God, to them that are called according to his purpose. When I had a whole bunch of my classmates walking with me, I was confident. But when I got to that last chair and one other opponent, that's when I began to get nervous. But I always won because I still kept my focus on listening to the music, okay? And when that music stopped, I always won. So here is the thing. We don't have to help God in his work. We don't have to try to, figure out what to do next. We don't have to go out here and try to do things right, because what we end up finding is that when we put our hands in the cookie jar and we're trying to do God's work for him, we end up making it worse than what it was starting out. So I need us to truly trust God in this season. I need us to stand on the promises of God. The scripture tells us in Psalms is that he prepares a table before us in the presence of our enemies. And sometimes we're trying to build tables with other people when God said, that's not what I designed for you. I am preparing your own table. Just because the music stops, it doesn't mean that you need to stop, because God is actually working on what he needs to work for your good. So I really do hope that you guys understand that God has not forgotten. He is not a God that will lie. He's not going to change his mind. If he said it, he is obligated to make it take place in our lives. It's easy for us, to trust God when we got food in a refrigerator and we got food in our cabinets. It's so easy to trust God when we got a few dollars in the bank account, and when something arrives, we just swipe that card. It's easy to trust God when we got gas in the gas tank and our cars are riding smoothly. It's easy to trust God when all of our needs are met and life is well. That's why we be dancing. That's why we're happy. That's why we can tell God thank you and worship him, because he has kept us and everything is going well. But here is the test, y'all. Can you trust God when the light at the end of the tunnel goes dim? Can you trust God when you cannot trace him? Can you trust God when all things are starting to look like it's coming against you? When the enemy is trying to intimidate you, when he's trying to get you to fall away and off of what God is asking you to do? Can you still trust God when all you have is God? That's the question of the day. And that's the thing. We cannot get discouraged right now. Y'all, listen, I've been discouraged all this week. It's like soon as I get past one thing, here come 10 other things. And I understand what it's like to be like, Lord, I am tired. I had to say that prayer so many times last week. God, I'm angry. I'm frustrated. I'm discouraged. And he sent me scriptures each time I opened up my mouth to begin to declare and pour over myself. And sometimes when you get real with God, you end up getting well, because he will encourage you with his word, y'all. He's done it for me, and I know he'll do it for you. So just because the music stops, that doesn't mean you need to scramble, because what God has for you is definitely for you. So I say to each and every one of you, they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They should run and not grow weary. They shall walk and not faint. Just because the music stopped doesn't mean God has. Y'all have a good day.